Welcome back to Adventure and Repeats. Glad to see you here. So we're doing some preventative maintenance on our small block Ford and our 1989 Four Winds boat. So this is the 351 Windsor, so it's a bigger engine. It's not the big block, but it does the job pretty darn well. So we're going through a lot of preventative maintenance just to make sure it's good to go. And I am the third owner of this boat. It's an old boat. And what it looks like is the fuel pump in this thing is probably the original, and it's mechanical. So it's probably going to go out eventually. I'd rather it go out now when I'm parked on shore than in the water. So we're just going to change it out ahead of time, and we're going to go through the process. What I have found is you can't find the dang original one anymore. It just doesn't exist, and that's just an OMC thing. That's just sometimes how it goes. Mercruiser, you might have better luck, but this is an OMC, so that's just what it is. But I did find something extremely close without being like an Amazon special one. This is a Carter, so it's very, very, very similar. The only difference is these ports, they're clocked in a different position, but that's not a big deal. That's something we can work around, and I'm going to show you how to do it on the process. So if you're looking for the same fuel pump, I'll have a link in the description. And the key note with mechanical fuel pumps in a boat is you can throw a regular automotive one on there, but the key difference is the vent right there. That little vent tube. Normally in automotive, it's just an open hole, because if the pump ever goes bad, it's just going to vent out in the engine bay and then fall on the ground. Well, in a boat, you don't want this just venting fuel into the engine compartment, because that's how you have an explosion. So what these do is they have a vent tube that's supposed to go back up to the carburetor into a vacuum port. So if there's ever a fuel issue, it's just going to pour back in the carb, and it's going to be safe, and you don't have to worry about starting a fire on your boat. So being a small block Ford, has a nice large lever on there instead of the short one like a Chevy does, but we're going to show you how it's done. So you can see they do look very similar. The vent tube is going to be in the same spot, just that clear plastic, which is going to get replaced too, because that is old and probably dry cracked and everything in between, so that's not going to be safe to use. But your fuel inlet and outlet on this is off to the right side. You're going to be coming out underneath the fuel filter, while your fuel inlet and fuel outlet are here. So this fuel inlet hose being steel, I'm either going to have to rebend or just cut it and use rubber hose. I'm probably going to go the rubber hose route just for simplicity and ease of use, and we're going to see what we can do from there. But otherwise, as your fuel pump, it does matter which way the fuel flows. You can see that one's labeled in, that one's labeled out. It does match what's already there. So we're going to get started. First we're going to do is get the lines off. We're going to cut that off because that is rock hard, so that's going to crack off nice and easy. We're going to get the fuel lines disconnected. This line right here we're going to have to take off and just move it off to the side. The steel line I'm going to have to take off there, and then take off at the fuel filter itself, because that's just going to be in the way for now, and that we'd have to bend around anyways, so because your inlet is all the way on the back side, so we're going to have to go almost a whole 180 degrees off to make that one work. We might still try to bend it to make it happen, but for right now it's in the way, so we're going to take it off and get it out of the way entirely. And then from there, just the two bolts. You can see, two bolts, that's all it holds it in. Once you get the two bolts off, pulls off out of there, and just kind of snake it out of there around the fuel filter, and then we're cleaning the gasket off. This one right here, we're going to start with 5/8 inch wrench. Break it free. We're going to take that off. And then same down here for this one, 5/8. Coming out just nice. Or get them off just like that. Once you take the upper fitting off, it comes out just like that. This is a nice fuel hose, so it'd be really cool to be able to use this nice steel fuel hose as the suction side, because steel is not going to compress. But I have a feeling we're just going to have to cut it and use rubber in between, but we'll see what we can do when it comes time. That hose right here is supposed to just come off. It's actually still in pretty good condition because it's not just breaking off, but hey, it's all done by a zip tie on this one. So we're just going to cut it and take it off, and this is going to end up getting replaced because this is not good. a 9/16 short socket and 3-inch extensions, perfect size to fit in here. And get these pump bolts out. And we'll get this pump out of here real quick. Get the last bolt out. And we're going to try to peel this out of here. And down, this makes it nice and easy. Obviously having the belt and pulley system out of there makes it a lot better, but they can still get it out the other way. It's pretty rough looking. Still has a little bit of fuel in there, but this port got some junk in there. So that's very interesting. We might just take this one apart later and see what it looks like. Not too much wear on there, so that's looking pretty good at least. Clean up all the gasket surface to make sure it's nice and clean, so when we put the new one on there, it's good to go. So now I always like to use a little bit of RTV gray on both surfaces, just a light thin coating, so that way when you put the gasket on there, it sticks and seals better, and during reassembly, it stays in place. It makes life a lot easier in the long run. The new pump in there, both bolts tightened down. I did salvage the 90-degree fittings off the old pump because these have the inverted flare fitting, so we're going to thread them in down there, and we're going to work our way back up in the system. As you can see with the factory fittings still in there, and still the factory hose ends, still plenty of room between the fuel filter and everything else and the oil filter, so nothing's in the way. Factory fuel pressure line that goes up to carburetor still fits in there because it's flexible, so you don't have to worry about that. That's in plenty of space. That'll end up getting tucked back, but it's not going to hurt anything being routed where it's at. As far as the fuel suction hose, right there. So could not get it to work with the metal hose, so we just ended up cutting it with a tubing cutter. And a little rubber in between will work just fine. This is fuel rated hose, so it's not a big deal. It's on the suction side, and I use double hose clamp just because I just don't like to leak. One would probably be fine long term, but I just figured, I got extra ones, I might as well double it up. So it's clean, it's concise, it works. Obviously the fuel vent hose is dry and hard, so we're going to have to replacing that, but as you can see, this is what it looks like with the new fuel pump in there. So the fuel pump vent hose, it does not have to be clear. You can use a black rubber hose if you choose, but most like to use clear, so that way if the fuel pump is ever failing, you can see that fuel getting pushed up into the carb through the clear hose. Obviously over time it does opaque and get hard and brittle, and then you have to replace it more often. And since it's not technically in the fuel system, it's just a vacuum hose. It doesn't have to be a fuel rated hose. That's why the clear can be used. It's personal preference. I'm going to end up putting clear hose on there just because I like to see it, just be sure on the safe side. So other than that, pretty easy to do with these engines. The only downside is having to just make the fuel lines get worked with these, but it's an old boat, it's an old motor, and these parts don't exist from the factory anymore. So honestly, this wasn't too bad of a project. So hopefully you can like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, and subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content on the channel, so be sure to check it out. And remember to have a great adventure.